I follow my curiosity, and it takes me into all kinds of strange places.
He stayed in a wheelchair and was spoon-fed by crew members to fully experience having cerebral palsy for his Oscar-winning turn in My Left Foot.
Well, part of my job is to be Dre, and I wore myself out.
Post-production depression.
In June 2017, Hollywood came to a standstill. The news flashed across headlines with the weight of a cinematic earthquake. Daniel Day-Lewis is retiring. For decades, he wasn't just an actor. He was the actor, the man who transformed method into myth, who vanished so deeply into his roles that audiences forgot where the character ended and the man began. The last time the world saw him on screen was in Paul Thomas Anderson's haunting drama Phantom Thread, and almost immediately after its release, he declared he was done. Finished. The curtain had fallen. The statement was chilling in its simplicity. Daniel Day-Lewis will no longer be working as an actor. His representatives added that no further comment would be made. No explanation, no farewell tour, just silence. And for millions of fans, that silence was deafening. How could the only three-time Best Actor in history simply vanish from the craft that had defined him and defined modern cinema itself? Was it burnout? Was it pain? Or was there something much deeper driving him away? At the time, all anyone had were guesses. But now, years later, Daniel Day-Lewis himself has broken his silence and revealed that the truth behind his exit was not what the world thought. This is the story of why Daniel Day-Lewis said goodbye, why he insists he never really meant to quit, and why his return might just be the most personal performance of his life. If you love uncovering the hidden truths behind Hollywood legends, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and stay with us until the very end, because this revelation changes everything. To understand why Daniel Day-Lewis stunned the world with his 2017 announcement, you first have to understand the way he approached his craft. Day-Lewis was not just a performer, he was a man who lived inside his characters. For My Left Foot, he refused to leave his wheelchair between takes, forcing crew members to feed him, just as Christy Brown had lived. For The Last of the Mohicans, he trained and hunted in the wilderness for half a year. On The Boxer, he spent 18 months learning to fight, and even tattooed his hands. He didn't act, he became. That transformation produced brilliance. It earned him not one, not two, but 3 Academy Awards for Best Actor. The only man in history to achieve such a feat. Every role felt monumental, every performance an event, but that brilliance came with a cost. In rare interviews, Day-Lewis admitted that after filming ended, he often spiraled into a strange emptiness. He described it as post-production depression, a haunting sadness when the characters he carried so deeply had to be released. After Gangs of New York, he confessed he spoke in Bill the Butcher's voice for months. After Phantom Thread, he felt hollowed out, as if some part of his creative spirit had been extinguished. And beyond the work itself, there was something else gnawing at him: fame. Unlike so many Hollywood stars, Day-Lewis never relished the spotlight. Between projects, he disappeared into the quiet life of a cobbler in Italy or into his farm in Ireland. He told the BBC, "I am, whether I like it or not, a public figure during certain periods. Then I disappear." For him, disappearing wasn't retreat. It was survival. So by the time Phantom Thread wrapped, the exhaustion was real. The spotlight felt unbearable. To protect himself, he did the only thing that seemed possible. He announced his retirement, but what he never told the world was that the word retirement wasn't the right one at all. When Daniel Day-Lewis declared his exit in 2017, the statement was short, almost cold. He was immensely grateful, but this was a private decision, and there would be no further comment. The press devoured it, critics mourned it, and audiences accepted it as final. The greatest actor of his generation was gone. But the truth, as Day-Lewis now admits, was far messier. In his own words, he never intended to retire, really. Looking back, he calls his announcement grandiose gibberish, a dramatic declaration born out of exhaustion rather than certainty. And exhaustion was nothing new for him. His acting process, often hailed as legendary, was physically and emotionally punishing. He once said, "Part of my job is to be drained." After Phantom Thread, he wasn't just drained, he was hollow. For the first time in his career, he feared there might be nothing left to regenerate, no spark to reignite his furnace of creativity. So instead of framing his break as what it truly was, a pause, a sabbatical, a chance to breathe, he framed it as a retirement. Perhaps it was his way of slamming the door shut, of resisting the inevitable pull back into Hollywood's relentless machinery. But the word retirement came with consequences he hadn't expected. It trapped him in a narrative. It made the world believe he was finished, even when deep inside, he knew he wasn't. This wasn't the first time he'd walked away either. After The Boxer, he vanished for 5 years, apprenticing with an Italian cobbler. After Lincoln, he planned another long sabbatical. Even earlier, in the middle of playing Hamlet on stage, he famously walked off mid-performance, convinced he'd seen the ghost of his dead father. Stepping back had always been part of his rhythm. But in 2017, the label of retirement turned that rhythm into a supposed ending. Fans grieved. The industry speculated. And all the while, Day-Lewis lived quietly, carrying the burden of words he didn't quite mean. Until now. As the years rolled by after Phantom Thread, the silence surrounding Daniel Day-Lewis only grew louder. For Hollywood, his absence wasn't just felt, it was seismic. Every award season carried the same whispered question. What if Day-Lewis had been here? Every ambitious actor was inevitably measured against him, even when he wasn't working. His retirement didn't just leave a gap in cinema, it created a ghost that haunted it. Meanwhile, speculation swirled. Was his health failing? Had method acting finally broken his body? Was he disillusioned with an industry that now valued superhero franchises over intimate character studies? Without answers, the myths multiplied. And Day-Lewis, the most private of men, let them. But in truth, his battle wasn't with Hollywood alone. It was with himself. Fame had never been his fuel. It had been his allergy. While colleagues chased the spotlight, Day-Lewis fled from it. Between films, he retreated to his Irish farmhouse, often vanishing into quiet pubs, content with a pint and solitude. He admitted he never truly accepted the life that came with stardom. There were aspects of the way of life that went with it that I'd never come to terms with, from the day I started out to today. The very thing that made him extraordinary, his ability to fully surrender to a role, also left him vulnerable. Each performance was a kind of self-erasure. And once the role ended, he often felt unmoored, lost between character and self. After Phantom Thread, that sensation deepened into something darker, the fear that there might be nothing left to come back to. So when he said, "I'm finished," it wasn't just a career decision. It was a shield, a way of protecting himself from the endless pull of the industry, from the constant pressure to perform, to outdo himself, to keep proving he was the greatest. In trying to escape the weight of expectation, he ended up adding to it. And as the world mourned his supposed farewell, Day-Lewis quietly began the long, uncertain work of rediscovering who he was without the roles that had consumed him. To understand why Daniel Day-Lewis's retirement carried so much weight, and why his eventual return feels almost inevitable, we have to look at the toll of his method, the personal cost of a career built on immersion. Day-Lewis's approach was legendary, even infamous. He once admitted, "I follow my curiosity, and it takes me into all kinds of strange places." Those places were often grueling. On my left foot, he lived entirely as Christy Brown, refusing to leave his wheelchair, needing crew members to feed him between takes. On The Last of the Mohicans, he didn't just play a frontiersman, he became one, hunting, tracking, and living in the wilderness for half a year. For The Boxer, he tattooed his hands and trained daily with real fighters for 18 months. And on There Will Be Blood, he carried Daniel Plainview like a demon inside him, a role that, by his own admission, nearly consumed him. The results were undeniable, but each transformation came with a collapse. He described the aftermath as a terrible sadness, a kind of spiritual emptiness once the camera stopped. His body, his mind, his soul simply couldn't accept that it was over. He confessed to Rolling Stone that even after the curtain fell, he often stayed inside the character, unable to let go. By the time of Phantom Thread, the process left him hollowed out. The film's lead, Reynolds Woodcock, a brilliant but tortured dressmaker, mirrored Day-Lewis himself in unsettling ways. Both men were perfectionists, consumed by their craft, and increasingly alienated by the world around them. For Day-Lewis, art was always a kind of battle, but this time the battle felt final. He feared there would be no regeneration, no spark left to fuel another transformation. And yet, while acting drained him, something else gave him life: work with his hands. After The Boxer, he apprenticed under master shoemaker Stefano Bemmer in Florence, crafting leather shoes. He described it as an antidote, something tangible, grounding, and real. Unlike film, where judgment was subjective, shoemaking offered clarity. It's either good or it's bad. In that simplicity, he found peace. For years, it seemed he might vanish entirely into that quieter life. But beneath the silence, the furnace never truly went out. It simply waited for the right spark, one that, as fate would have it, would come from his own family. When Daniel Day-Lewis announced his exit in 2017, the ripple effect was immediate. Critics declared it the end of an era. Filmmakers wondered who, if anyone, could fill the void left by the only man to win 3 Oscars for Best Actor. And audiences were left with a gnawing sense of loss, as if cinema itself had been robbed of one of its greatest instruments. But the impact went deeper than the headlines. Day-Lewis's absence forced Hollywood to confront a truth it often avoids, that the pursuit of greatness can come at a devastating cost. His withdrawal wasn't just about leaving roles behind. It was a cautionary tale about the toll of perfectionism, about the fine line between dedication and self-destruction. For aspiring actors, Day-Lewis had long been a North Star, proof that total immersion could yield transcendent results. But his so-called retirement revealed the hidden side of that legacy: the exhaustion, the loneliness, the psychic toll of never switching off. It was a reminder that even legends are human, that brilliance often comes with a breaking point. Culturally, his exit also symbolized a shift in Hollywood itself. When Day-Lewis began his career, studios still invested in character-driven dramas, films where actors could push themselves into uncharted emotional territory. But by 2017, the landscape had changed. Franchises, sequels, and shared universes dominated the box office. For an actor like Day-Lewis, whose genius thrived on intimate, challenging scripts, the industry felt increasingly inhospitable. His silence wasn't just personal, it was a statement about what Hollywood was becoming. And yet, his return in 2025 with Anemone, a film directed by his own son, Ronan Day-Lewis, reframes everything. Suddenly, the retirement reads less like a goodbye and more like a pause, a necessary retreat before rediscovery. His choice to step back now appears not as weakness, but as wisdom, a refusal to burn out entirely so that when the spark returned, he could meet it fully. In that sense, the broader impact of his exit is paradoxical. On one hand, it reminded the world of cinema's fragility without him. On the other, it ensured that his comeback would be nothing less than seismic. For years, we believed he had left forever. Now we see that he never truly let go, and perhaps he never could. In the end, Daniel Day-Lewis's 2017 retirement was never really the end. It was a pause, a moment of silence from a man who had given too much of himself, for too long, to the demands of his craft. To the public, his words felt final, but to him, they were little more than a shield, a way of protecting himself from the weight of expectation. Now, with the release of Anemone, we can see the truth more clearly than ever. He didn't walk away because he no longer loved acting. He walked away because he loved it too much. The process consumed him, hollowed him out, left him with nothing to give. And rather than continue burning himself into ash, he chose survival. He chose to retreat. He chose to live. But time has a way of reshaping even the deepest wounds. For Day-Lewis, the spark returned not in Hollywood, not in some grand comeback engineered by studios, but in the most personal way possible, through collaboration with his own son. That intimacy, that sense of creation rooted in family rather than fame, gave him the courage to step back into the light. Looking back, his so-called retirement feels less like a conclusion and more like a reminder. A reminder that even legends are vulnerable, that art comes with sacrifice, that sometimes stepping away is the bravest act of all. And now his return reminds us of something else, that genius doesn't vanish. It waits, it transforms, and when the time is right, it re-emerges with a power even greater than before. So perhaps the real truth is this: Daniel Day-Lewis never truly quit. He simply gave himself permission to rest, to breathe, to rediscover life beyond the camera. And in doing so, he ensured that when he returned, it wouldn't be as a man broken by his art, but as an artist renewed by it. And maybe that's the greatest role he's ever played. If you've been captivated by this journey into the hidden truth of Daniel Day-Lewis, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more deep dives into Hollywood's most fascinating stories, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Anemone will be his ultimate masterpiece, or just the beginning of a new chapter? Because one thing is certain: Daniel Day-Lewis was never finished.